Hey everybody, it's Coach Kathy here with another cat chat. We're going to get a little sciencey today, but it's something that's really important for all of us, whether you do intermittent fasting or don't. But when it comes to weight loss, we're going to myth bust something today. So your tip of the day today is going to be busting up the thought that what I consider to be one of the biggest and most regurgitated lies in the weight loss community, and that is that in order to lose weight, you should eat 6 small meals a day. How many of us have heard this? I know I have countless times, and chances are you could probably sit down with a healthcare professional right now and they're still going to recommend that you do this. And it's not that they're wrong or that I'm right. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. There's many ways to skin this cat of weight loss. And I do believe weight can be lost doing 6 small meals a day. But it depends on so many things. There's so many factors that go into your choice and method of weight loss. And I find for people who are obese or morbidly obese, like if you have 50 pounds or more to lose, this may not be the venue that you want to choose. And I'm going to explain why. You heard me say yesterday that weight loss all comes down to insulin. And I didn't really explain that because there's a lot to it. And that's what I want to kind of do today. So whether you're, like I said, doing intermittent fasting or not, with your calorie counting, whether you're doing keto or low carb or just portion control, insulin matters. Insulin will always matter. You do not need to be a type 1 or type 2 diabetic for insulin to determine the outcome of your weight loss journey. So insulin is a hormone, and this hormone gets released because of a rise in blood glucose. So foods that spike your blood glucose are mainly carbohydrates, but not always. Some proteins can do this too, but it's essentially, your sugars and your carbohydrates, and that includes simple and complex carbohydrates. The difference between those is just how high the spike goes and over what time. Is it a rapid spike and drop with simple carbohydrates? Is there a slow and steady spike from a more complex carbohydrate? But they're both going to cause an insulin spike, or sorry, a glucose spike. So if our blood glucose remained chronically high and just never came back down, we would die. So our body's smart. We have a pancreas. The pancreas is going to recognize that there's a rise in the blood glucose levels, and it's going to stimulate elicit an insulin response. So every time you eat something that stimulates the glucose, it's then going to elicit an insulin response, and the body's going to pump out insulin and pump out insulin. But side note, fat never elicits an insulin response, and not all proteins do. So just keep that in mind with food choices. However, once insulin has been released into the body, it is going to lower the blood glucose levels, but it's also going to do a few other things. And one thing it's going to do is it's going to put the body into fat storing mode. Insulin tells the body not only to store fat, it's going to tell the body to store belly fat specifically, and it's going to tell it to make even more. So this becomes a vicious cycle. And belly fat is particularly detrimental to our health because it's a precursor for a bunch of different diseases, not to mention diabetes being one of those. And it creates the visceral fat. So that is not like the healthy brown fat that helps keep our core body temperature where we want it to be. This is the white, fluffy, got to change the notch on your belt all the time type of fat. And it's very unhealthy, the white, fluffy fat, basically. And it's visceral fat that gets intertwined all around of our internal organs and up into our heart. And if you do ever want to take the deep dive and watch a pretty graphic video, but it was a game changer for me. I booked my surgery the day after watching this video, but it's on YouTube, and it's called Postmortem, an Autopsy. And it's a British documentary of the autopsy of, I believe, a 62-year-old obese woman. She was overweight or obese. I can't really remember what her BMI was, but she wasn't morbidly obese as in like 700 or 800 pounds. She just seemed to me what was like a normal woman with a little bit of extra weight on her. And so when they took her cadaver and opened it up and exposed her internal organs, and you could really see where all that visceral fat goes, it was a real eye-opener for me. It is graphic. It is not appropriate for children. If you are squeamish, it's probably not appropriate for you either. But if you can handle those things and you really want to see the effects of obesity on all of our internal organs, it was very, very eye-opening. A little bit of a science nerd, so I love stuff like that. But it was, convicting for me too. So when we do eat and it triggers insulin, over time, as that pancreas just pumps out more and more and more insulin, it requires more to get the same reaction. And it kind of, the cells that are requiring the insulin, they become almost blunted to it, or I'm trying to think of the word, like immune to it almost, and resistant. So it causes the disease called insulin resistance. And most people, if you are overweight or obese, you likely are insulin resistant already. It sounds scary, like, oh, I have insulin resistance. But I mean, most people do if they're carrying any 20 pounds extra weight and beyond. And it's completely reversible. So good news there too. It's not like this is a death sentence. And if you have this, like, good luck. We can take care of it quite easily through diet. And if insulin resistance is left unchecked, it can lead to metabolic syndrome, which comes with a host of other things like high blood pressure and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And then that can all eventually lead to type 2 diabetes. So this is something we want to stop in its tracks, and it is 100% related to your diet. So that's why the 6 small meals a day, I feel, can be a lie, and it can be detrimental to people's weight loss journey, because when you're eating 6 times a day, that's 6 times that you're encouraging and eliciting an insulin response. And when you do this over and over and over, number 1, you're not losing weight. Number 2, you're probably producing belly fat. And number 3, you're overeating and you're probably going to over consume calories. So there's been some studies that have been done by the Journal of Nutrition, and these are systemic reviewed, and meta-analysis is done of randomized controlled trials. But that's big fancy mumbo jumbo to say, like, this study was done the right way. And it showed that those who eat breakfast versus those who don't, in total for the rest of the day, were consuming almost 300 calories more. So this notion put out to you by breakfast cereal propaganda marketing, and people saying, like, breakfast is the most important meal of the day and everybody needs to have a breakfast, that's not necessarily true. And it may be because it's Post or General Mills putting these things out and they want you to buy their cereal. It doesn't keep people fuller longer. I can speak from personal experience here. I know in high school, I would wake up and I would either have a bowl of cereal, 2 pieces of toast a day, and I would be absolutely starving, like pain, like almost a level 3 on the hunger scale pain by 10 o'clock in the morning. And it was all I could do to get to that 10:15 snack. And then I would probably be having a granola bar or something. And that would last for about 15 or 20 minutes. And then it was just like, I could hardly stand it to make it to noon lunchtime. And I didn't realize I was perpetuating the cycle of blood glucose spikes, insulin spikes, and then blood glucose drops, which makes you hungry, which makes you produce the ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. We call it the ghrelin gremlin. Whenever you hear me say ghrelin, and it kind of sounds like gremlin, that is the hormone your body produces that tells you that you want to eat. And so insulin, in turn, secretes ghrelin. So it's just a vicious cycle. So charts show a direct correlation to the more you snack, the more we didn't even really snack until the late 70s, early 80s. Like, people ate their 3 meals a day and that was it. Like, it was a treat if you got to have something after school when you came home before supper. That even started in like the 80s. Like, before then, you ate your 3 meals a day and that's what you ate. This whole marketing campaign of snacks and needing snacks really didn't happen until the 80s. And it is a direct correlation. As snacking went up, obesity went up, and particularly childhood obesity too, which is very concerning. So eating more frequently just means you're eating more frequently. And as a result, you're eating more calories. So by default, just by cutting out breakfast or delaying breakfast and having a smaller one, or a lot of you're probably finding when you're breaking your fast at 11 or 12 in the morning, that's kind of like your brunch. And that's totally okay. You do not need to eat 3 square meals a day during your eating window. That's up to you. And that's exactly why I want you to pay attention to your hunger cues and your satiety cues. And if you're not hungry, you do not need to eat, especially if you are overweight or obese or morbidly obese. You absolutely never need to eat if you're not hungry. So 3 reasons to maybe back off on some snacking too. Like I said, eating more often is not going to discourage hunger. It's going to encourage hunger. And we do develop habits, whether we know we have these habits or not. So when you get used to eating 6 times a day, your body's going to want that. And it's going to be like, oh my goodness, it's been 2 hours, and it's going to start to freak out, and it's going to throw out some of those ghrelin hormones. And as long as you're not a level 3 or a level 4 on that hunger scale, you can ride that wave. Hunger comes in waves, and it actually doesn't last that long. So just because you feel like you're hungry, and I'm telling you to pay attention to hunger cues, well, pay attention to them, but it doesn't mean you need to act on them immediately. Use that scale. It's just try drinking some water. Try waiting 5 minutes and see if it passes. It really, hunger can trick us, and it's not necessarily something that needs to be alleviated immediately with food. And another bad thing about all these snacks and snacking, excuse me, still have the dose going on in case you can't tell. I sound like B. Arthur from Golden Girls. But anyways, most snacks that people are grabbing for are not healthy snacks. You know, I probably wouldn't mind so much if you were grabbing a Greek yogurt that didn't have sugar in it, or if you were grabbing some cottage cheese and some veggies, or if you were grabbing just a piece of chicken from the night before. But most snacking that happens, and especially the snacking that leads to weight gain, they're garbage. And I mean, we saw this in the 90s with those Snackwell cookies that were fat free. And then you would think like, I can eat 100 of them because they're fat free. Well, that's not how that works. And then that kind of progressed into, okay, well, we knew you can't eat as much as you want. So calorie restriction, it's all about the calories. And so then we saw the emergence of all these stupid 100-calorie snack packs. And it's like, you can eat Oreos. We're just going to eat little ones and in this little bag. And, you know, cheese nips and goldfish and, you know, all those 100-calorie snack packs are nothing but highly processed, refined, simple sugar carbohydrate garbage. And they absolutely lead to obesity. And let's be honest, who did just eat one and feel satisfied? You might have felt satisfied for a minute. You might have gotten a bump of dopamine or serotonin from having that little rush of fat and sugar and salt together. But it doesn't last long. It definitely doesn't sustain you, and it doesn't fill you. And it perpetuates something that I call food brain. The thing I love about fasting and the freedom that comes with it is that I'm no longer always thinking about food. And when I ate 6 times a day, I was always thinking about food. If I was having my breakfast, I was wondering what my morning snack was going to be. And during my morning snack, I was looking forward to lunch. And then during lunch, I was looking forward to what my afternoon snack was going to be. And during my afternoon snack, I couldn't wait until supper. And let's be honest, it wasn't 6 times a day because it was probably a dessert and then an evening snack too. When you were continually eating and focusing on food, that's all stimulation. It's all like muscle memory, but in your brain, and you're training yourself to always think you need to eat, and you don't, especially if you are overweight, obese, or morbidly obese. So that leads to habit eating. That leads to mindless eating and TV eating. It can lead to binge eating. It definitely leads to overeating, because anytime you're eating when you're not hungry, you are overeating. It's as simple as that, guys. The more you're putting in, the more that's going in. It does kind of come down to simple math. And that can lead to stress eating or eating because you're depressed, which is, we'll have another video about emotional eating. But this 6 small meals a day can set you up for all of that. And none of that is healthy, and none of that is conducive to weight loss. But most importantly, when we're continually bombarding our body with this insulin and leading to insulin resistance, it leads to something called insulin hyperinsulinemia, which means there's an elevated state of insulin almost all the time in the bloodstream. And that's very, very bad. That's going to increase hunger. It's going to increase stress. It's going to decrease your mood. And that's why people are walking around and they say they're hangry all the time. Well, it's because they're constantly bombarding their body with this food or thoughts of food and food stimulus. And so they think they need it all the time. If they don't have it all the time, it actually decreases mood, and your serotonin plummets and your dopamine plummets. That's why when you eat, it skyrockets back up. So you're just, again, perpetuating that cycle. It's going to increase low blood sugar, because when insulin's high, it's dropping your blood sugar. And when blood sugar goes low, again, that increases hunger signals from the ghrelin hormone, the ghrelin gremlin. But scarily enough too, and I say this as a cancer survivor, when you're in a perpetual constant state of hyperinsulinemia, it increases your cancer risk by 2. So you're doubling your risk of cancer by constantly having that elevated insulin in your body. It's also going to increase your risk of cardiovascular disease and stroke. It's going to increase your risk of type 2 diabetes. It's absolutely going to increase your weight. And belly weight specifically, waist circumference, is one of the best indicators of someone's overall metabolic health or not. If you're carrying most of your weight in your midsection, you likely are insulin resistant and you are very much at risk and soon of type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance. So it can also increase high blood pressure. It can increase your risk of developing polycystic ovarian disease, also called PCOS. And it absolutely does cause NAFLD, which is non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Besides PCOS and type 2 diabetes, I had all of this prior to losing my weight. I was the textbook large bellied person, as you can see from that awesome picture that I shared with you all of me in my sports bra and underwear. You know, I was carrying my weight. I looked like I was 9 months pregnant carrying twins or triplets. And, you know, I always blame myself on being big boned and, you know, I had a wide bone structure, but now that the fat's been removed, it's clear to see that's not the case. So anyway, my point is that I was doing the 6 small meals a day. I was even overeating on healthy foods. You can even overeat on keto foods and low carb foods. There isn't a time that it's going to be okay to just eat and eat and eat and eat until you just feel so full that it hurts. It doesn't matter if you're doing that on healthy foods or not. You know, overeating is never going to be conducive to weight loss. And that's why you're never going to see me post snacks that are like, you can eat as much of this as you want to. I remember hearing that during meetings of different weight loss programs that I was on. You know, you can eat as many of these as you want to and as much as you want to. You know, you can even overeat on berries. Eventually, if you eat enough berries, they're going to spike your blood sugar and they're going to elicit an insulin response. We need to get out of that mindset that we need to eat until we're stuffed. And we need to retrain our brain and learn the mindset of stopping at enough and never making it to stuffed. Stop at satisfied. And that goes right back to one of my first videos where I showed you about playing halftime. We're taking and dishing out your food and visually or with your fork and knife, cutting it in half, eating half of what you had portioned out for yourself, and then stopping and assessing the situation. And pay attention to those full signs that you get. Some people have a deep sigh. Some people will sneeze. Some people will have a runny nose, or some people will hiccup. But, you know, you should always be checking in with yourself when you're eating and stopping at enough, stopping at satisfied, and not going so far that you're stuffed. If you're part of the clean plate club, start putting it on a smaller plate. That's something that's a really easy trick that can help you push through that kind of like mindset barrier. So I know that was a lot, and that's a lot to go over, but this video was for everybody, fasting or not. If weight loss is your goal, you do absolutely need to be concerned about and be looking into how much insulin you're stimulating throughout the day with your food choices. Do you have to do keto to lose weight? Absolutely not. Do you have to do low carb to lose weight? Absolutely not. But, and again, this is a big but. My buts are always going to be big buts. If you have 50 pounds or more to lose, if you are obese or morbidly obese, insulin is not your friend. A lot of carbohydrates, especially on the higher end of the glycemic index, are absolutely not going to be your friend. What you eat is always going to matter. Even if you're like me and you've lost your weight and you're now in maintenance, food choices always matter. There will be a time when you lose your weight that you do become metabolically more healthy and you can handle a few more carbohydrates, but that scale can tip out of your favor very quickly. The more frequently and the more often you start doing that, you can start that cycle all over again and get back to a level of hypoinsulinemia. And then you're just bombarding your fat cells again, and they're going to swell up again and rapidly multiply. And the next thing you know, you're overweight and you've got 20 pounds to regain, but you don't really know why. Well, we know why, and it does come down to insulin. So just be mindful of what you're eating when you eat. And it's not that there's the carb police, and I'm not the carb police. And, you know, carbohydrates absolutely have their place in a healthy diet, but it absolutely does come down to how many, how often, and what kinds. And we'll talk about that another day. I really want to do like a macros 101 class, but today I just wanted to dispel this 6 small meals a day lie. So for the majority of you in this group, I think I've given you a lot to think about. And let me know what you think down in the awesome. And you guys are awesome too. And I'm glad you're watching, and have a great night. Thanks.